60 in San Diego. Now, in this time slot, as in Los Angeles, with this time slot, an overwhelming
Welcome to the stream.
number one. So I want to thank everybody in Los Angeles and San Diego, I guess all of Southern California, for the number oneness. I mean, it wasn't even a close contest. So that's good news. On another note, as you may hear, I'm going to kind of struggle through it. I may have, I don't know, a cold or the heebie-jeebies or something. It's trying to get me. So I took a day off yesterday, but I'm back today, and actually I feel pretty good. But it may be a struggle. All right. I just got a note moments before airtime from Ed Dames. The following. Hi, Art. Ed asked me to give you this message. He is currently on the Hawaiian Islands, working and conducting what he calls SciTech's most important project. He would like to break the news about it to the public on your show. The date, which would be the most convenient for him, is Thursday, January 30th. He'll be in LA then. If you'd like to make this definite, please let us know. It'll be put on Ed's schedule. I have done that. So there you are. Ed Dames with something really hot, which he will break here Thursday, the 30th. Tonight, I've got something very special for you. His name is Dr. Barry Taff. He was a guest on Dreamland. He was the principal investigator on the case, one parapsychological case that later became known as the Entity case, and there was a movie by the same name, The Entity. When he was on Dreamland, he told me of some photographs of the real entities and some others that at the time seemed hard to believe. I said, you have photographs? He said, yes. So I said, Doctor, how about sending them along? Well, he did. He did. You're about to hear of these cases in a few moments. But if you want the documentation, the photographs that will go with what you're about to hear, then you need to get up to my webpage, pronto, and take a look. The address is www.artbell.com. That's www.artbell, no space, ARTBELL.com. Take a very good look. If that doesn't put one big chill down your spine, I don't know what will. And we will describe these photographs. So if you can make your way to a computer tonight during the show, you're going to definitely want to take a look. And I will tell you more about Dr. Taff in a moment. Dr. Barry Taff, 48 now, earned his doctorate in psychophysiology with a minor in biomedical engineering from UCLA. He holds 6 medical patents, is currently the CEO of an R&D medical company developing these patents for the market. From 1969 through 1978, he worked out of the former parapsychology laboratory at UCLA's Neuropsychiatric Institute as a research associate, where he studied telepathy, precognition, remote viewing, as well as poltergeists, hauntings, doppelgangers, and UFOs. Dr. Taff's research has been published in numerous journals, periodicals, magazines, and books over the last 25 years. Over the last 28 years, he has been the principal investigator on more than 3,500 cases of poltergeists and hauntings, one of which became the best-selling book and motion picture, The Entities, starring Barbara Hershey. It was on Fox, 1983 or by Fox. He also investigated numerous local CE3 and abduction cases, one of which involved his own girlfriend in 1977. He's been on all kinds of TV and radio programs, and now he's on this one. Dr. Taff, welcome to the program.
Pleasure to be here.
Great to have you. And, of course, there is a great deal of audience here that did not hear your appearance on Dreamland. And when you sent me those photographs, it took a while, but it was worth the wait, because when they got here, I went, holy mackerel. Holy mackerel. So I'm urging people to go take a look, which they are presently doing, you can be sure. And I guess I would like to, I ought to first ask you why you pursued the line of investigation you obviously have. In other words, the paranormal. Why?
Well, I think initially it was one of pure scientific curiosity. I've always been curious about nature, about why events occur, why things don't occur. But I think what really drove me into it was, as I was growing up as a child, I had what people would commonly call psychic experiences, and they were quite profound and intense. They were very frequent, telepathic, precognitive, out of body, and my friends and family weren't having it. So I was left with the thought of, well, either I'm crazy, everyone else is crazy, or something very peculiar is going on. I chose the latter.
Did they think you were crazy? In other words, did you tell them about this?
Oh, I told them and demonstrated at times, uncontrollably, unconsciously, and I didn't know what was going on, nor did anyone else, and I think the most common response was one of fear, because, back in the 50s and 60s, this wasn't very well known or talked about in public mainstream.
People are, well, look, it's still true today. People are afraid of what they cannot understand.
Correct.
Simple as that. So you began actually having your own experiences, and then, I guess you, psychophysiology.
Right.
Explain that.
Well, psychophysiology is the study of the interrelationship between the brain, and the body. It's another way to get into medicine without going to school, because you don't have to. You learn a lot of the same information, but it's more towards function than towards diagnosis and prescription. So my interest was, since I was having all these peculiar experiences, I want to learn as much as I could about the brain, how it functions, its behavior related to that, and the body in which held the brain.
All right, I tried asking another doctor we had on the other, I think at the beginning of the week, about the brain. How much do we actually know about the function of the brain? How much of the brain has been mapped, and are there areas we still don't understand properly, or how far have we come?
Well, we've learned a great deal over the last 30 years. The amount of information learned all the way from just simple EEGs to magnetic encephalographs, which are MEGs. Now we have CAT scanners, and we have MRIs, and we have PET scanners. And so now we can look at the functioning of the brain in real time, and we've learned what parts of the brain are responsible for, what parts of the locomotion, internal processing, metabolic function, things like that. But in terms of thought and processing of thought, we're still at the tip of an iceberg. It's sort of like, for every cell that fires, there are numerous cells around that one cell that don't fire. It's called lateral and surround inhibition. So when people, euphemistically say, well, we only use 10% of our brain. If we used our entire brain at any given instant, we would die from electrocution. Because the insulation around every cell would be negated, and we basically would short circuit.
Is there any reason to believe that for those who embrace the process of evolution, most of the scientific community, that we are using any more of our brain today than we did when we first began studying the brain?
Without having technology around the time where we were first utilizing our, human function, our cerebral functions, there's no way of knowing. I assume that the brain has gone through some changes. As common has evolved into various primitive, humans, and then we evolved into what we have now as Homo sapiens. But I think we've changed possibly simply from, the environment, which would be environmental, and we've changed also from the physical environment. In other words, we've evolved at a physiological level. We've evolved because our environment has forced us to change. So we might have lost certain functions we possessed as primitive humans, and we probably gained things we didn't possess as primitive humans.
A trade-off.
Well,
They have studied people like Einstein, I'm sure. Did they not examine Einstein's brain?
I remember reading something about that in
Yeah.
the past.
Einstein and others that have exhibited abnormally high IQs or intelligence, are they able to find any physical differences in the brains of these people?
I've never read of anything that's really that specific, that's state-specific enough to say that there were more synaptic connections, or there were more binding receptors, or certain lobes had a denser amount of dendrites or axons. No one knows. I mean, I think when we deal with intelligence, we have a very difficult time explaining it, because there's different types of intelligence. There's rote memory, which is the ability to acquire information and spit it back, which is what school is all about. Then there's an emotional type of IQ, which is being able to synthesize and integrate information and then throw out new things that you didn't learn based on what you did learn. And so there's different types of processes. You have situations, people, idiot savants, who can do incredible things, but only one or two things, while, very simple cognitive processes they can't do.
All right. Well, then it's very difficult to measure intelligence, because there are a lot of people who have done absolutely lousy in school. Rote memory, very little. Concentration, interest, very little. Grades, very poor. And yet, when they get to be adults, they become great entrepreneurs and make millions and millions of dollars, or go on to some other form of greatness. So there seems very little relationship between what is done in school and then what may be done later. Sometimes I guess there is a relationship. Obviously, you do well in school and you go on to do well in life, but not always, huh?
Well, also look at the people in the arts. I mean, not all of them were scholars or scholastic academicians.
Right.
And sometimes people evolve into wonderful artists in different fields, and we know so little about what makes each of us unique and gives us the potential we all have. And I think as time goes on and we are able to do non-invasive real-time processing of information within the nervous system and, the brain, we're going to understand more of this, but it's probably going to take a couple more decades before we really have an understanding of what sparks that light within each of us.
Do you think we are further along in the mapping of the human genome or the brain?
Probably the genome at this point, because there's more money being spent on it, and since you're working with something that's in vivo, that's not connected to the body, we can work with it with more freely and greater independence than you can with a living person, in an MRI or a CAT scan.
All right, let's now talk about things parapsychological. Things that, the ability to move things, levitate things, control things, the ability to read somebody's mind, or even put thoughts into the mind. All these areas of parapsychology, including poltergeist and all the rest of it, are you able to look at the brain and see any different area at all of function when these things apparently are going on?
The only thing that comes to mind when you ask that question is with regard to, there are altered states of consciousness that are intimately associated with certain types of paranormal phenomena, such as controlled, certain, what we call TSI, let's say telepathic, clairvoyant, or precognitive situations in laboratories. They've seen altered states which are what I call hypometabolism, or wakeful rest, where the person's in a very quiet state of rest and relaxation, but their mind is really quite active at one level, but quiet in another. This is suggested by a high density of alpha activity in certain regions of the brain. The respiration is slowed down, blood pressure drops, TSR basically goes down. This relates to an altered state that seems efficient, or remote viewing, where the body is totally passive and the mind sort of shuts out cognitive processing and is allowed to access information that is within
about Ed Dames. He's got something big he's working on. He was a military remote viewer. I take it that you have studied, to some degree, remote viewing.
Yes.
How much is there to it, do you believe?
Well, it's sort of like the rest of what we call paranormal phenomena. When it works very well, but it fails a good percentage of the time. And the biggest problem with evaluating remote viewing information, as with all this area, is to understand that there's a lot of noise in the system. For every time you succeed, you fail several times beyond that. And the best way to say it is that it's a very imperfect means of acquiring information.
Okay.
And you have to be able to objectively verify the information you're perceiving. So when the government got all caught up with this in the 70s, when they conducted these experiments, you have to go out and verify this information to make sure that it correlates to events in the real world. Otherwise, it's fantasy and, confabulation.
All right, here's what I've heard about the process of remote viewing. That a target is assigned, not by name, for example, but with a random number. I've never quite understood how that worked. But it is given to many, as 8 remote viewers, completely separated from each other. And then they come back and many times will give exactly the same either written description or photograph or, whatever the target was. They'll come back with the same information.
Yeah.
That seems to be a discipline that has been applied to remote viewing that has not been applied to other areas of parapsychology or abnormal occurrences. In other words, they've developed some sort of discipline.
Well, we found the same when we were doing our sort of initial exploratory work in this area back in the end of the 60s and early 70s, which much of the government and the DOD's work was based on. We found the same thing occurring. Independent corroboration coming in within a controlled environment, and it was quite fascinating. But we also found we got independent corroboration or convergence, and many times it was wrong. The information was totally, fallacious.
Now that is interesting. Independent results,
Right.
saying the same thing,
Almost identical, sometimes verbatim.
identical and verbatim, but being wrong.
Right, which means we all, for some reason, locked into the same inaccurate or incorrect information.
Yikes. First time I've ever heard that one. Doctor, hold on. We'll be right back to you. My guest is Dr. Barry Taff. And you just wait till you hear some of the stories he's got to tell. Thought I'd ask about the brain first. I am Art Bell, and this is CBC.
West of the Rockies at 1-800-618-8255. 1-800-618-8255. East of the Rockies at 1-800-825-5033. 1-800-825-5033. This is the CBC Radio Network.
You bet it is. Good morning. My guest is Dr. Barry Taff. And he is a very, 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 very interesting individual. He has studied about 3,500 cases of weirdness, poltergeist, hauntings, that sort of thing. And he's done it professionally at UCLA, the UCLA lab. And so what you're going to hear tonight, I suggest you pay very close attention to. A couple of more questions on remote viewing coming up because I am fascinated by that, particularly what we're talking about right now. Dr. Barry Taff. Doctor, I'm absolutely fascinated by remote viewing, and to hear that sometimes 8 remote viewers, or however many, come back with the identical wrong result would imply, I guess, either that the remote viewers are affecting each other, or the control for them is affecting the remote viewers. The control being the man assigning the random number for the target, or a completely outside force is affecting what they receive. Which one of those theories would you lean toward?
The information that we gathered didn't lean toward any direction, one direction or the other. It just told us that there were times when everyone locked in on precisely the same information. And what's bizarre is that we could never tell beforehand when this was going to occur until we, evaluated the results of each particular session. We had no way of knowing what we were dealing with, but sometimes that information was more precise and had a higher degree of convergence than when it was accurate. So we didn't understand. It just told us that the process involves an aspect of consciousness we know nothing about. I mean, no one knows anything about this. And it's locking into information at a remote set of coordinates. How we get to that, God only knows. I mean, with all the controls and the protocol and the experiments that have been conducted over the years, the mechanism still isn't understood.
Here's an idea. I would suspect the control, the person who is the controller for the remote viewers, the one who assigns the random number. Now, that person, I think, knows what the target is. Am I correct?
Yes.
All right. It is possible, is it not, to test somebody for PSI ability?
Not with a degree of certainty. There's no hard and true test that will guarantee results. It has to be geared towards the individual. To use standardized testing, it's very boring and fatiguing, and you're not going to get results that are very promising. So if you test the average person with these methods, you're not going to get results that are that impressive.
That's too bad, because I was going to suggest if you could test somebody and get a very low PSI result, somebody with almost no inherent ability, versus somebody with a very high PSI result, a lot of inherent ability, I would think then trying both of those as controls for the remote viewers would be an interesting test.
Well, what's bizarre along the lines that we tried when we got the sort of convergence on totally erroneous information. We tried to determine if that information correlated to anything involved in the experiment or any of the people participating in the program. It never did. It's like we all sat down and wrote the same script without even knowing we were going to be writing scripts. It was something along that line. We never really saw any connection to anything that could be traced down. It was almost like, we all decided to imagine the same thing at the same time.
Remote viewers claim varying degrees of success. Many of them claim high degrees of success, maybe too high. What do you think? Is there any claim that you can validate?
Well, it varies depending on the people you're working with, depending on the situation. We saw sessions where we were getting almost 100% accuracy. We saw other sessions where it was 0. And the only variable we saw that affected performance was in a longitudinal sense, strangely enough, and this was looking backwards on the data, this was not with an a priori anticipation. The only thing that we saw that consistently produced a diminution of results across the board was the phases of the moon.
The phases of the moon?
Yep, and we didn't anticipate it. We saw a drop in results that had a 28, almost a 29-day, an even interval between the diminution. And we looked for what would correlate to it. The only thing that correlated to those consistent drops in performance was the presence of the full moon.
How did it relate? During the full moon, it was...
The drop in performance diminished.
Diminished
during the full moon. It did not. There was not an equal and sort of opposite response during the new moon. We saw it during Santa Ana condition with the positive ion charge in the air. We saw similar drops in performance, not of the same magnitude, but we saw drops in performance.
Oh, that's fascinating.
We try to compensate for the Santa Ana conditions with, negative ion generators and things of that nature. It didn't make much difference.
Oh, that's really interesting. Do you think that remote viewing can be further developed? In other words, with additional disciplines and whatever else they can do, that it can yet be improved even more?
Oh, I think with the application of one particular technology, positron emission tomography is a form of scanning the brain where they inject a radioactive substance into the bloodstream of glucose, and when the brain metabolizes it gives you a very beautiful color scan that shows you what part of the brain is metabolizing to a greater or lesser degree in real time. To my knowledge, no one's done studies to see if remote viewers would show changes in certain areas of the brain if they're processing at a greater or lesser degree during this activity. If this could be done and we saw consistent results that certain areas of the brain were overactive or underactive during this activity, we might know to reinforce that and thereby increase the potential of the phenomenon or the performance of the phenomenon.
What does electroshock therapy do to a person?
Well, it's sort of the best way to describe it is you don't remember, even though you know you were getting the ECT, you don't remember the experience. It's sort of the simplest way of short-circuits the brain, temporarily scramble the activity of the simple thing.
Is it almost like rebooting a computer?
No, it'd be like sending a high-voltage electrostatic discharge through the computer without destroying it.
Oh, that's not such a good idea with computers, Doctor.
So it's the closest I can describe it. So, there's tremendous controversy over the application in any respect.
Isn't it kind of like slamming a fly with a hammer?
Well, it's like hitting a fly with a howitzer.
Howitzer. Okay, from something like that, a blunderbuss approach, to a more refined approach. In other words, the study you just talked about, looking, for example, at a remote viewer in session and mapping the active areas of the brain, and then individually attempting to stimulate those particular areas of the brain. Could that be done?
That's what I was suggesting. Once we know what, let's say we had 100 remote viewers done over a certain amount of time, and let's say we saw consistent patterns of metabolic activity in a PET scan in each of them, and it only occurred during remote viewing activity or some sort of paranormal perceptual process, then could we somehow artificially reinforce or enhance that part of the brain or process of the brain, of course, safely, and see a dramatic increase in performance and more reliability?
So, with that process, it might be possible to eventually artificially cause parapsychological occurrences, poltergeist activity, whatever else, the ability to... What have you ever seen anybody do, Doctor? Have you ever seen somebody move any object with their mind?
Well, the most unique situation with regard to that was when Uri Geller visited the lab in 1975 at UCLA, and we put him through some controlled situations. And
you were there then?
Oh yeah, we were there.
Okay.
And I was there. He bent some keys, and the most impressive thing was not him holding a key and bending it, someone else's key, but stroking the key, putting the key down where he wasn't even near it, and the key kept bending and broke, independent of it.
What? The key broke?
Broke, snapped, right.
Snapped?
Right. And that was impressive, and I guess, anything could be faked, but he did some other things there, but it's been impressive because...
Well, I would take it at UCLA, you would have fairly tight controls. I mean, I can't imagine a trick that could snap a key.
Well, I can't either, but there have been debunkers that have made all sorts of claims. I mean, one debunker actually made the claim that Geller had a high-powered laser hidden in one of his teeth.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
Things of that nature. That was impressive, but I've seen things in particular cases. I was investigating a poltergeist case about 10, 11 years ago in the San Fernando Valley, and it was a doppelganger case where the young woman, apparently they were hearing her. Well, it started off where objects were moving around. Furniture, when she was young, was moving around. They heard things, people walking about. Doors were opening and closing. to where the phone would ring, and they hear the girl on the phone, and it was her voice, but a younger version of her voice, and yet she wasn't on the phone. And they checked the phone lines, and these things kept happening. And the most impressive thing about this case, the girl happened to be epileptic. Now, when the seizures were occurring, focal seizures were occurring, is when the phenomena would kick up a heel. When the seizures, waned, the phenomena would wane.
Now, let me get this straight. The young girl was present, and the phone would ring.
And they'd hear her family, and I think her boyfriend at one point, picked up the phone and heard her talking.
As a younger...
Yeah, and she was responsive. It wasn't like a recording, and this happened more than once, to my knowledge.
Oh, that really gives me the chills. You said she was responsive. Now, this goes to trying to cover so much ground too quickly, but the very nature of what a poltergeist or a ghost is. There are some people who think they're kind of echoes of what was, or an occurrence, something that did happen that is repeated again and again and again in some sort of horrible, endless loop, some sort of shadow of an original occurrence, but that can't be if there was responsiveness.
In this situation, a lot of these cases are suggesting that there's an intelligence behind it. It's not just an audio-visual reconstruction of what came before, playing back and people observing it or witnessing these situations. Strong suggest phenomena interacting with the people on a microsecond level. And what's impressive is that the last time this girl had any activity is when she went through a very intense trauma, and afterwards the seizures came back, the epileptic seizures, as did the phenomena. So, and with everything, last time I appeared on your show, a number of people called, 2 men in particular, and they both appeared to be poltergeist agents, and they both were epileptic. So, and both were on medication. The minute they started taking the medication to quell the seizures, the phenomena terminated. When they stopped taking the medication because of the side effects, the phenomena returned.
What is going on in our brains when we have an epileptic seizure?
Massive surges of electrochemical activity, spiking, spindling, erratic behavior in which energy is being sort of discharged and emitted in a very chaotic, frenzied way as opposed to organized, which is what thought's all about.
All right, then we'll come back to that. That causes me to ask you then, you remember I mentioned electroshock therapy. Has anybody done any study with regard to psychological occurrences during electroshock therapy? Would that be a reasonable avenue of investigation?
Perhaps, but the potential harm to the patient would be so great, I don't think it'd be worth the trade-off.
Well, I know, but I mean, in some cases where they still do that therapy.
I personally have never read of any accounts of that occurring where, psychokinesis erupted. And again, of course, the difference between normal or, I guess, unassisted chaotic behavior in the brain and induced through ECT might be 2 different things. Who knows if let's say if you took a map, a 3-dimensional map of the brain's electrical activity during, let's say, a seizure versus an ECT, then how similar they'd be, we don't know. I mean, if they'd be identical, what areas of the brain would be more affected than others. And also, epilepsy, sometimes it's focused in certain areas of the brain, certain loci versus others, while ECT generally is more of a generalized response.
I was just sort of picking up on the randomness of it, and I was wondering if there might be some sort of connection.
And also, I think the person, they have to be strapped down because the body obviously would consult during.
Sure.
And I've never heard of anything occurring, but there might be accounts on record, but I think people would be a little shy to discuss it in the medical environment.
At the time all of this investigation was going on at UCLA, what was the attitude of the staff? Was it serious? Were the rest of the professors at the university laughing at the parapsychology lab?
Well, put it this way, the NCI didn't particularly care. The neuropsychiatric institute did not particularly care for what was going on. It was a very serious, academic environment, and they were under scrutiny by government because the government helped fund the NCI and private funding, and they didn't particularly like it. It wasn't what they thought was science. They looked at it as anything other than science, maybe fringe science at best. a lot of professors in different departments in neurology, physiology, and psychology were intrigued by it, but they were frightened that if they got too involved, it would be self-injurious to their career. Now, you're not going to throw away your career to get involved with something that, isn't going to lead you anywhere except through personal exploration. And people had to consider that. And the lab was an interesting place because it was, we got thousands of calls every year for different types of phenomena, and people didn't know where to turn to. I mean, they were at their wit's end in terms of who do you call.
Because of the career-threatening nature of this sort of research, Doctor, how much private, even secret research do you think might be going on around the country now? Unpublicized, unrecognized, unpublished?
Well, given that really good research, if it's properly instrumented, costs enormous amounts of money, I'd say that it wouldn't be at a great level.
There are, however, people I know, and I will not mention any names, with a very great deal of money who are funding investigations into these sorts of areas. I don't know where that money is going, but I do know it is occurring.
Oh yes, I'm sure there's research going on all over the world. The thing is, a lot of institutions of higher learning, wherever they may be, are more concerned about political correctness and not being cast out of that environment to get money. And if they are associated with this at a public level, they're dead in the water. And there's still that taint of, what we had in the of spiritualism, and people don't like it. What was interesting at the NCI, they were doing orbital undercutting and psychosurgery, late 60s and 70s. That was okay. But God forbid you should do research into the nature of our consciousness. Who we are, where we come from, where we're going, and what makes us us. That they weren't interested, because what I discovered is the academic environment is governed by the ability to use information. Well, you can't make use of it to make money, control behavior, or to kill people. It doesn't seem to have any direct application in the real world. And thank God, most of the government's attempts to utilize this phenomenon to do any of the above didn't work that well. Acquiring information, yes. Controlling behavior, not that well. Killing people, you had a better chance of growing your hair back at 95. It's not going to happen.
Not going to happen. So, the idea of all kinds of people with psychic powers of one sort or another concentrating on, saying, bursting a blood vessel in Saddam Hussein's brain, that one's a no-go.
Well, I don't think the psychokinetic effect is cumulative. I don't believe that if you had 20 people working on it, you're going to get a better result because you have one person. Theoretically, if there was a person, like an Uri Geller or whoever, or psychokinetic medium, who could do that, there was Nina Kulagina in the Soviet Union, who could induce severe electrical burns by just touching you, and could,
Really?
types of unusual effects through psychokinesis, and she was put on film, and she was very well researched.
Anybody who could snap a key could snap a blood vessel, I would imagine. Doctor, hold on, we're at the top of the hour. Relax. We'll be right back to you. Dr. Barry Taff is my guest. I'm Art Bell. This is CBC.
Art Bell is taking calls on the wild card line at 702-727-1295. That's 702-727-1295. First-time callers can reach Art Bell at 702-727-1222. 702-727-1222. Now, here again, Art Bell.
Across this great land. Good morning, everybody. I'm Art Bell, and though I was down yesterday, I'm certainly not out. By the way, a whole bunch, you know that doll that somebody sent me, that cursed doll that we deposited in the trash can with a bunch of salt? A lot of people sent me messages and said, see, that was it. Thanks a lot, folks. God, that was weird. I'll tell Dr. Taff about that. Anyway, listen, to repeat a couple of announcements, the surveys are beginning to come in again, as they do several times a year. And the fall survey is in. And in Los Angeles on KABC, in our time slot, we're number one. You're going to hear a lot of number one screaming this weekend. Important football coming down Sunday. So you'll hear a lot of that. Number one! And guess what? In San Diego, the survey has also come in every single category, men, women, you name the age, in this time slot, from 11 to 5, KFMB is way out number one. Number one, as they say. So thank you to the people of Southern California. Way out number one. I mean, these are markets with 40 and 50 radio stations, and we just ran away with it. At any rate, I've got a very, very, very interesting guest, and I'll tell you about him. I know many of you are joining at this hour in a moment. I received a very interesting message from Ed Dames, who said he is in Hawaii at the moment, working on the most important project that SciTech has ever worked on, and would like to be my guest January 30th, where he is going to break what he calls big news on this program. Mark it on your calendar. My guest is Dr. Barry Taff. For 9 years, he worked with the parapsychology lab at UCLA on things strange. All kinds of strange occurrences. They investigated them. Many of them. About 3,500 cases, as a matter of fact. And actually, the majority of the cases, Doctor, came out to be not much, right?
Well, most cases you're dependent on, as these are field investigations, you're dependent on being in the right place at the right time. The phenomenon, not only is it transient in nature, it's elusive and evasive. And if it's psychokinetic in origin, if it's stemming unconsciously from one of the people living in the environment, your presence in itself is intimidating.
So does anyone remember what killed the dinosaurs? Well, as we all know, it was, of course,
When you can't say it, or there's a cop